Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wharton Tech Talks. I'm your host, Tanika Mehra, and today we have Tanay Kothari. He is the co founder and CEO of Wispr Flow, an AI powered voice first productivity tool designed to help professionals communicate faster and more naturally. Tanay has been obsessed with building technology since his teenage years, launching over 50 apps, and he has represented India at an international computing and linguistic competition. Before Whisper, he worked on AI and product teams at leading startups to gain hands on experience building scalable AI driven platforms. Whisper Flow is a pioneering screen first, voice first future where professionals can dictate messages, edit with natural language voice commands, and boost productivity, which is over 3 times faster than typing. Backed by NEA, 8VC, and other top AI leaders, Whisperflow has raised 26 million to redefine the way we interact with technology. Welcome, Tanay.
Hey, Tanika. Thanks for having me here.
Awesome. So, could you share a little bit more about your background and the inception of Whisper?
Yeah, of course. We started the company sometime back, but it's been an idea that I've been working on for pretty much the last 16 years, which is what should the next generation of computing really feel like? Back in 2008, when the first Iron Man movie came out, I wanted to build Jarvis. So, me and a friend of mine built what was then one of the world's first voice assistants. And to people, it just felt like magic. It grew to about 2.5 million users. Google shut us down with a cease and desist. My dad was mad at me. It was a whole series of things that happened. But to me, this idea was just very top of mind for the next decade, pretty much, which was really like tapping on icons on a screen and clicking keys on a keyboard as the best way to communicate just feels like a ridiculous idea to me. So when I think about technology, what it should really feel like, I want it to be something that understands me, maybe even better than I understand myself. I want it to be something where interacting with it feels just as natural as interacting with other people. And if you're building a system like this, then it eventually becomes something that becomes a part of people's identity. And everything that we're building at Whisper now is all in those lines of where we want technology to go towards.
That's incredible. And that's a funny story about you watching Iron Man and then just wanting to build this product out of that. But with so much of our work today happening on screens, what do you see as the biggest challenge in people transitioning to just a voice first future?
I think a lot of what we do on our computers today, you can divide it into categories. For some things, you do need a screen. If you're consuming content, you need a screen. If you're reading large swaths of text, you need a screen. If you're in discovery mode, you're looking at a bunch of options, maybe you're shopping for a new dress, all of that, you need a screen. But for a lot of small things, you don't. You don't need a screen to quickly reply to a text message. You don't need a screen to send a new calendar invite. And there's a whole list of things there. The thing that I'm really going after is for a lot that you do today on your phones and your laptops, what parts of it are just way better to have as a voice first interface? And let's build that so you aren't building towards a world where people are stuck on their screens always. They can do a lot with just something that exists in the background. And them as people can be a lot more present with their heads up, looking out into the world.
Yeah, that's very fair. So, what do you think was like one of the first few use cases that at Whisper you guys have been focusing on kind of guiding people to use voice versus their keyboards and looking at
Yeah.
screens?
The biggest thing that we started off with, so actually Whisper Flow was the eighth product that we built internally. The first seven were what you would expect if you hear voice interfaces. It would do actions for you. I could say things like, hey, I want to meet Tanika for dinner. Can you make a reservation at a restaurant nearby, send her a message, and make a calendar invite? And it did all of that. It was beautiful. And this I'm talking about 2021. So this is pre when AI agents were a real thing. But the thing was, nobody in our company used it. I used it maybe once and then I forgot it existed. Because what we realized is when you're building any consumer tool, what you need is to really have people build a habit. And you can't build a habit with very infrequent use cases. So then what we built towards was voice dictation. Super simple. You speak naturally and it writes perfectly formatted in your style across all your applications. It went from something that I maybe used once a day to a tool that I now use hundreds of times a day. And some people use actually this a lot more than even I do. And that has really strong habit building potential. So that's really how I think about scaling back product development is building the one thing people do 100 times a day, then the 10 things that people do 10 times a day. And then we go and build 100 things that people would do one time a day. Because at that point, they're already bought in, they're already using it. And now we're just adding a lot more value.
That makes sense. I'm a huge fan of the product. I use it a lot myself. But for our audience who might not be familiar, could you tell us how is it different from something like a Otter AI or something like voice to text that you use on your
Yeah.
iPhone?
If you have ever used voice to text to send a message to anybody, you know that you are terrified at what it's going to produce and if you're going to have to go back and fix the mistakes that it makes. Flow doesn't make mistakes. It's primarily because we've optimized it to get you outputs that don't need editing. It's very specifically what we built the platform for. And it came from an insight that we had, which was people speak very differently than they write. You stammer, you stutter, you change your mind halfway while speaking. You speak in long rambles and sentences that are 100 words long. But when you're writing, that is not what you want to write at all. So Flow does small things. Like if I say, hey, let's meet at 5 o'clock. Actually, you know what? Let's do 6 p.m. Flow writes, hey, let's meet at 6 p.m. because that is literally what I would have written. If I give it a long set of things like, hey, I have three thoughts here, like first, da, 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 and all of that, Flow would format my message when I'm dropping it in Slack as bullet points. So my team doesn't bang their head against the wall and try to read like a whole thing that I send them, but it's instead a very structured message. These are few things that we do that just make people use Flow for everything and make it to a point where people don't really have to edit that much.
That's fair. And would you say when people see the quality and caliber of what Flow can do in terms of reducing editing, that feeds into your thesis that it'll become more of a habit that people use every day?
It does. And initially, it was a hypothesis. 6 months ago, when we launched the product, we had no idea how people were actually going to use it. All we knew was for the six people on the team, how we like to use it. But people keep surprising us day in, day out. For people who've used Flow for a month, did you know that they use Flow more than their keyboard on their computers? Measurably. And this is the first time any software on the planet has replaced people's keyboards. This has never happened before in the history of computing. Keyboards have just been as much of a staple as you can imagine, right?
Definitely. I mean, spending less time typing and more time speaking would definitely make communication more personal as well, which is something
Mhm.
that I'm excited to see. Could you tell us about like a pivotal moment that you faced early on that kind of set in stone that what you're doing is the right thing for you?
Yeah. I think it was the example that I'd given earlier about going from building a tool that does actions for you to voice dictation. And for a lot of people who look to start companies, right? If somebody was like, came to me and like, Tanya, let's start a voice dictation company, I'd be like, that doesn't really sound sexy. This exists in so many places. Like, I don't know about this. If somebody's like, oh, let's build this thing that can control your computer and do all these cool actions. Like, that sounds a lot sexier. But when you actually get down to it, it doesn't really matter what it sounds like. What matters is, do people use it? Does it build habit? Do people pay for it? Is this on a path to a much larger vision that you have? And on that note, like a big realization I had is there's no feature or product that's big or small. It doesn't matter how cool something sounds. All that matters at the end of the day is what your users tell you.
That makes sense. And can you tell us about your journey, like how you took from scaling your idea of Whisper to a fully operational business today?
Yeah. The first versions of Whisper we had internally, we gave it to a few users, and the base slowly grew on from there. And for a long time, we decided actively not to charge people for it. We wanted to see, okay, if you just have this product, does this build habit? And we didn't want to put any blockers in front of people for that. So we got it to a point, and it was really funny because we had the other problem where people were skeptical. Why is this product for free? This product is so good. Are they selling my data? How is this company not charging for it? And in October of last year, we decided to launch the paid plans. And to our surprise, a lot of people started paying for it. So usually I was expecting 5% of users to pay for the product, which is what you see as usual for any company. You compare the Dropboxes, Notions, and all in the world. And our numbers were more than twice that of the percent of people that were switching over to being paid users. That to us was a big sign like, okay, this is adding a lot of value to people's lives. And for some reason, they really want to pay for it. And then was the second phase of it of let's really start to understand what the user journey looks like. Spending time with people on like, what made you download this application? How did you hear about it? What made you want to start using it more? What was your first aha moment? Why did you pay for this thing? Why did you not pay for this thing? And really getting answers to all the questions was really helpful to revamp the whole user journey and flow that we have, restructure the company to start to put itself in a lot more product first, mature way, starting to onboard larger enterprises, teams, and so on. And it's just going from there. But I think a big part of it was just leading with curiosity and all of those questions at every step of the way helped drive the transitions that we needed to make pretty much at this point every 2 months.
That's great. And I'm glad to hear you got such good feedback from your customers and you're seeing it in growth in paid users. But could you tell us a little bit about what strategies you're using to grow your user base and expand your market presence? I've seen that really funny video that you have of taking the axe to the keyboard or this
Yeah.
bus or whatever. But apart from that, are there any other marketing strategies that you've used?
Yeah, a bunch of them. So, one thing that makes marketing our product very unique is people by default hate voice dictation. Like if you say Siri, you just see the disgust on people's faces, right? That's the best experience they've had. So, we can't go out there ourselves and be like, we have really good voice dictation for you. Because people are like, yeah, Siri's been saying that for the last 10 years and I know what they give me. And for a lot of products that can just do that, that leads to very different marketing channels. Ours had to be a lot more social proof driven. So instead of that, the things that we had is how do we empower our users to post more about it, to share it in different places so that they users are not just seeing like, hey, this is a tool. This is just people saying this is what Apple should have built. And people are like, huh, that is right. Siri does suck, but is there something better? And it grabs their attention. And I would say 95% of our growth has just been organic through word of mouth referrals, through users posting it on Slack channels, users like you putting me on podcasts. So we can dive a bit more into flow and I can share more of the stories behind it.
Yeah, this is a shout out to all the listeners. Please try it out. I think it's fantastic and it'll save you a lot of time. And then to tell you about one of my favorite features, which is the auto editing tool. Could you tell the audience about how the system works? How does it understand context to make real time corrections when people are speaking? That way, it's different from the other dictation tools, as you mentioned, where you have to pause and it calibrates what you said. Here, it actually listens, understands, and then edits.
Yeah, that's a huge part. You know, when I think about flow, I think about less as voice dictation, like a tool like Otter, and more so as if there was a person sitting on your computer and you are telling them some email to send, whatever, what would they do? Well, if you like this person, then they're most likely competent. They're very good at writing. They have a good understanding of you. So if you're a professional, you write professional emails, they're not going to drop in emojis in there. And third is they are reliable. So they reliably work every single time and you can trust them. That is really important. Those were the characteristics that we wanted to build into the product. For example, Tanika, if I'm sending a message to you, it's never going to get your name wrong. It's like right there on the screen. It's crazy to me that other things get your name wrong and other things don't use this context that is very readily available. The other things that we do is instead of writing everything you say word for word, we have built our own models that understand you, what you're saying, what the context is, and based on that, what really should be written. And there's one thing that we're going to be building out soon is for it to sometimes give you suggestions as well, based on how you usually write, on what you could do better, ways in which you could improve right there and then. Less so on grammar and such, but more so just the content of your ideas. Because it starts to have context of what you're saying across different applications. If you wrote something in Notion, then you're writing an email somewhere else. It starts to build a better mental model of you.
That's fair. And so it kind of learns and understands what the user likes and what the user talks about and what apps the user uses, becomes more intelligent. So the more you use it, the better it understands you and the more effectively you can use the tools. That's
Yes.
great. And you've mentioned that you're trying to build a world where people aren't glued to their screens all day. What would you imagine a voice first world to look 10 years from now?
I walk down the street looking around. People are not stuck on their phones texting away, they are just looking up. You, as just people, can just enjoy a lot more of what the world looks like, what people around you, and interact more with them. Things like screen time and such feel like outdated concepts. I feel like tracking screen time and trying to reduce screen time is a band aid solution to the problem we have, which is literally everything you do, you need to stare at a screen to do it. And then we're like, oh, we're going to reduce screen time and we're going to download like 5 apps that block other apps and do this other thing. And it's like, yes, sure, but that is not the way to really do it. What you really need to do is kind of rethink the problem from the ground up, which is humans weren't meant to stare at screens all the time. We're meant to communicate, we're meant to be understood, we're meant to share some context, see things happen.
I recently tried out this tool, Sesame AI, where it's like a voice assistant speaking back to you. Are you familiar with the tool? Have you thought about whether you want Whisper to eventually speak back to the user using the tool? Or what would you say is the next step? You mentioned also replacing the 100 habits that a single user does versus just changing
Mhm.
one habit. Could you just talk about which of the two would you think would be a
Yeah.
natural transition from your existing
So I
product?
think having the computer speak back to you is useful in some situations. I don't think it's a catch all for everything. Primarily because sometimes if you're consuming content, or like if I'm learning something more about a topic, your eyes read information so much faster than your ears can even try to process. If I was trying to listen to something that I'm learning about, my impatience would get the better of me and I'll probably close the thing. I think audio output is good for certain situations, and we're definitely going to build that in. The way I think about it is like, okay, let's take a workflow. What is the best experience for this workflow? Does it need to have voice output? If so, we'll add that. Does it even need to have voice input? Because in some situations, maybe your voice is not the best way to interact with it. You need something different, and we'll build the thing that we need to. Just for writing, voice is the best that you have. So we decided to build it that way. And instead of hearing back what you said, like Siri repeats back to you, is just way better to quickly glance at it on the screen. Even better if you start trusting the system and you never have to read the outputs again, which is what I do. I just genuinely speak the thing and I press send. I don't even read what Flow writes anymore. I know it's probably going to write the right thing.
That's great that you have such implicit trust, and hopefully your users feel the same way and they continue
We
using.
do track that across users on how long they spend when the text space on the screen and the time before they press enter. Within 2 weeks, 90% of the time it's under half a second.
Wow.
Most people for most things don't wait and read what Flow writes. If at any point that drops, that is a big flag to us that we need to go change it.
Sure. Yeah. Fair enough. That's a cool metric to track. Are there any other interesting metrics that you've noticed through your user adoption? Maybe number of words spoken before they become like a lifetime user or something of that sort?
There's some metrics like that. A couple that I find really interesting is the number of applications that they use Flow in. So when I think about the user journey a person has with the product, they have the first aha moment during onboarding when they do their first dictation because it is insanely accurate, insanely fast, and that's the first time they have experienced anything like that. So they're like, oh, holy shit, this is awesome. I was not expecting this at all. The second aha moment comes when they find their first use case. It could be somebody responding to all their emails, all their Slacks, using it in Cursor or Windsurf. They could be using it to talk to other AI systems. Pick one, they love using that, and they're like, okay, whenever I do this thing, I'm just going to use Flow. That's the first habit that they build. And a couple of weeks from then is when they get to a point where they're typing on the keyboard somewhere and they're like, this is so painful. Why am I doing this? And that's when you see an explosion happen. For people who've used the product for a bit, On average, they are using Flow in across 90 different apps and websites.
Wow, that's incredible.
I know I was shocked when I saw that number and I had to double check like a few times. I was like, is this real? Did I do something wrong? I was like, no, it's genuinely, it's literally everything that they use.
I think I need to think of creative ways to expand my usage horizon across more apps then. I'll take this up as a challenge.
Yeah.
Shifting gears a little, so you guys have raised a significant amount of money. Could you talk to us about when you decided to raise? What was the process speaking to investors? How did you choose the investors to raise from? And any advice that you have for aspiring entrepreneurs seeking for investments for their startups?
Yep. Happy to share some high level notes that really helped me along my way. And then, of course, people's situations are different. So there's very unique advice I would have if I'm talking to somebody. Number one, for Flow, made sense for us to raise from day one because we knew we needed a good amount of capital to get this thing off the ground. We did that. In general, with fundraisers, what you want to do as a founder is you want to have it happen in a very compressed time frame. We started the fundraise on a Monday and we told everybody we are going to close this and finalize allocations by Friday of the next week. Essentially 12-day time period. And a couple of weeks before that was when we had planned all the meetings for those 2 weeks. So you want to make sure everything is running at the same time. Everybody that you're talking to is running on the same schedule. Because the last thing you want is you receive a term sheet from somebody and you're in first stage, first calls with other people, same as applying to jobs, right? You don't have negotiating power, which is not good. So the goal is to get as much negotiating power as you possibly can, which is what happens then. Other things that were really helpful for us is for all the VCs, we try to get warm intros and get the people introing us to hype us up. The conversation is already starting on a good note and we don't have to spend the first 10 minutes trying to build credibility. It's already there, and so we can build on top of that and get to dream together. Note I'd make about pitch decks, there's a lot of questions that come around there. Do I need a pitch deck? Shall I just wing it and have a conversation? Shall I make a memo? I generally think use a pitch deck as essentially a presentation guide. I keep my pitch decks really short, about 7, 8 slides, tops 5 words a slide, and they're just supposed to ground what I am talking about. And in terms of the conversation, I can do that in my sleep once I start fundraising because everything is pre planned. There is a script for the intros for the exact presentation. Me and my co founder went through 150 possible questions we could get asked, and we had concise and very clear answers written for every single one of them that we nailed down. And when you go into any conversation with that level of preparedness, it feels to the other person like a deep sense of confidence. You're not stammering. You are not having to think twice or ponder about questions that are coming. Every single number and answer you need is at your fingertips. And that is really what investors want to see. Because they're like, okay, if you come into this conversation like this, just imagine how you're going to be running the company. And that got us to have a really successful fundraise. And honestly, for me and my co founder, it was just really fun. It was like maybe the most fun 2 weeks that I had company wise. Because the other part of the fundraise that a lot of people miss out on when you're in a constant feeling of stress is you are talking to incredible human beings. Like these people have likely built incredible companies, built really strong teams. They're extremely smart people. And I have a chance to spend 30 minutes sharing about my dream with them and then get their feedback on it and maybe get them excited and have a chance to work with them. That is really special. And the underlying thing, what helped with all of this was just this deep feeling of gratitude that I had going in and coming out of every single call. And I think people can really feel that. People can feel what your intentions are when you're coming in to talk to them, however, subconsciously. So that way it ends up becoming a lot about the mindset.
That's great perspective, and I'm sure coming in with a positive attitude, it translates in your passion about building something that you love. Adjacent to that, can you talk about building the team at Whisper? What qualities do you typically look in for in early teammates that have joined your team?
This again may not apply to everybody. This is very much culture specific to what we care about. So, number one thing is we have a very high ownership team. People have about 2 or 3 days to ramp up when they join the company. And after that, they are building, owning, and leading their own features, products, sometimes even product lines. I don't care if this is a full time person or an intern, they're all treated the exact same way. And that is great because we are able to attract incredibly high functioning people who don't like bureaucracy, who don't like constantly being told what to do. Because we generally don't have that much time to tell people what all to do. There's so many problems that we need to solve. And what I feel our job is, like me and my co founder Sahej, is to lay out the vision, to lay out the roadmap, give people enough clarity where they can make those decisions by themselves, and then bring the best people in for the job so that we can fully trust them with it. And if you get people who can function that independently, honestly saves so much headache. You are happier, they're happier, and your company overall is much better because you just let people focus on where they work best in.
That's good. People have autonomy. And what would you say are some of the core values or pieces of culture that you've tried to instill in your startup?
Yeah. So there's four pillars that we build upon. Number one is open communication. That is, I think, how you build a high level of trust. And I also think integrity is the only thing you have as a person that you can never lose. And what goes with that is also just assuming the best intentions in other people. So that builds a warm culture. Number two is being user obsessed. Everything that we build is for the users. They are the eventual people that really matter at the end of the day. Third is being very, very, very particular about the details. Every single pixel, every single millisecond of interaction matters to the user experience. And people can feel that in ways they cannot express. That matters across all fronts. Simple example that most people don't think about is for the emails that we send out. We have incredibly low unsubscribe rates because I go through every single word and it's like, does this person care? Are we adding value to this person? Are they going to read it and think that it's spam? I want to make sure that we are being empathetic to what people are thinking about when they open this email. Why are they opening this email? What do they want to get out of it? Let's get them that. And then we have a couple of goals that we want to communicate. Let's make sure those happen as well. But at some point, if you stop empathizing with the users, you just lose their interest. And that just matters in every single touch point that you have. The last part I would say is a focus on growth. Like we're solving a lot of hard problems, they're going to keep coming up. We want people who take up challenges, and when a new thing comes that they don't know about, they get excited to have the opportunity to learn a new thing.
Speaking of new things, are there any upcoming features or developments you're particularly excited about?
Oh, there's so many. So we just launched Windows a week ago. We just launched the iOS app yesterday. And next up, what we have is some features that a lot of people have been requesting for. We are going to be dropping in the ability to have snippets. So if there's things that you send very frequently to people, could be an intro about yourself, your address, whatever. You can just add that into Flow so you don't have to say the whole thing again all the time. There's another way where some people want to have more control over how their messages are sent. We're adding writing styles where people can go and edit that and give some specific instructions on how they want their messages to be formatted so they don't have to kind of go paste it into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to do those things for them again after that.
That's awesome. I'm excited to try them out. And my last question before we go into rapid fire, what would you say has been the most memorable experience at Whisper so far?
When we were doing the first launch, it was all of us in the office together for maybe 48 hours, preparing everything for it. Everything was happening last minute, right? This is the first launch of us as a company. And then we launched on Product Hunt. And then somebody had this idea of like every 100 upvotes, we do some challenge. Every hour, somebody's doing like, we're all doing push ups together, we're all doing pull ups together. And there's just like random face offs that are happening in the office. I think that was one of the times where we all just really bonded together, like going through a shared struggle as a team. And that was special.
That's awesome. And congrats on being number one product to twice, I think, on Product Hunt, at least that I've
Yeah.
seen. That's awesome. Shifting towards our rapid fire round. So, my first question is, what is your favorite AI tool that you use today apart from Whisper?
I love using Superhuman.
Okay, that's cool. What is your wildest bet about the tech industry in the next 10 to 15 years?
Computer science is gonna be useless as a degree.
Oh, interesting.
that's going to happen in the next 5, not even the next 10.
I've heard this thought that it's more so that 10x engineers are going to become even more useful versus hiring people for like product and
Yeah.
marketing. You might just hire an engineer who has a more business mindset to replace those functions. I feel like you're in the other camp though, where you think that the engineers aren't needed and you can have
Uh,
the marketing growth professionals use no code tools to code.
Yeah, there was a time when you needed human calculators because no one could do that. Then everybody had a calculator in their hands that they could use to do whatever, and those humans were out of a job. That is literally what's happening where you or anybody else, like our entire marketing and customer support team, no one's an engineer. They all have these tools. Instead of writing documents and support tickets, they just send us like, hey, I think we should build the feature this way. And they just send us the built feature. And the engineers have to then properly build it into production. But the number of engineers we need is like, it's not that high now. And we're only going to get the best of the best. And if it's the biggest major in the world right now, one of the largest ones that is producing people, a lot of them are not going to get jobs.
Interesting. And
Yeah.
finally, what's the best career advice you've ever received?
Best career advice that I've received is to genuinely care about people. And there's some very specific tactical things that go in this. For example, what I do when somebody new joins the team is I want to understand what are the best ways in which this person learns. People learn in very different ways, and I want to know that. And what are the best ways in which this person likes to get feedback, both positive and negative? And knowing that I shouldn't apply the same model to every single person has, I think, been one of the biggest unlocks to the kind of manager that I am today.
That's great. And I'm glad that you have that realization of getting to know your team better and curtailing your specific feedback and interaction style based on what their preferences are. I'm sure that'll go a long way.
Mm-hmm.
But from my side, that's it. That's all the questions that I had for you. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Tanika, pleasure is all mine. This was fantastic.